apologize in advance. I built a slide deck that probably 3/4 of you can't see, so anything, if you just raise your hand in the back, if there's a point where you can't see it, I'll display it a little bit better. Ideally, I won't have to use too many slides, but I did add some fun ones that I hope you can appreciate, and I'll send all of them to whoever asks after the fact so you can know that you're not missing anything fun. So I guess to start things off, I'm going to give you a very quick background on like why I exist right here today. I've been doing the whole online dating thing for 4.5 years. I started off in a once per mile town, got into an open relationship 4.5 years ago. That led me to dating another 200 people, and over the course of that, those 200 people became really good friends of mine who then referred me to more and more people as we go. I referred them as well. This is across 14 cities. And the main philosophy that I have in dating is one that I call Dateworking. And that's essentially the topic that that's like the main crux of what we're talking about tonight, which is, louder? Okay.
No, I can't see it, I'm just looking.
Okay, don't worry about it. This is like not really fun stuff right there. The main thing we're talking about tonight is this idea that dating in New York sucks, and it can be a lot better. And even if you're in a relationship already, there's a lot that I still want to touch on, because the baseline skills you'll be using in dating and relationships are one and the same. It comes down to communication and empathy, and we'll get into that in much more depth in a second. But yeah, I went from the dating space, and then like 3 years ago, I started on a jobs platform because I thought I learned enough about how dating works to be able to implement it in a different field. And I figured like I was tired of helping random people get random dates or go into relationships when I could be helping people at scale get into like long-term job relationships. So I built a platform that is almost identical to OkCupid, and that one's called Job Suitors. That's been my, like the last couple years of my life have been very much absorbed by that. It's taking the entire online dating principles of like matchmaking based on data and applying it to jobs. So that's been a lot of fun, and I guess the dating thing is something I really can't get rid of because it's so much a part of like the lens through which I view the entire world now, that it's just something I will talk about forever and every week. That's like how I relax at the end of the work week. Either type like new articles about dating or try to understand how people navigate different types of relationships. And so hopefully I'll convey a bunch of that tonight, and if there's any questions, just like, yes, you can try raising your hand and I'll answer them if I can. Or if it's too long a question, I'll just like answer it at the end. So I mentioned a little bit about like what the consultancy is, what it does. It's mostly just, it's me doing the dating consulting. So companies pay me. OkCupid was my first client. They said like, what the hell should we do with this one competitor? They're about to enter the US market. And I was like, okay, let me help. Like, here's all the different things that are going on with that competitor, all their features, all their user shit. And so I put together a presentation for that. The more fun part isn't the dating site side of things, but more with people. I like interacting with people. I meet people all the time, pretty much every day. And I always want to know like, what the hell is like at the top of your priority stack? What are you trying to become in life? What are like, how can I help get you there? And is there anyone I know that can help get you there faster or in a better way? And so that's something that has been kind of embodied in this Dateworking ethos when I'm talking to people about what kind of relationships they want to get into, what kind of dates they want to go on. And yeah, I've been doing the Dateworking side of things for about 4.5, 5 years now, but it started really when I was 10. I was like helping my parents navigate their own relationship, and it's only kind of snowballed from there. It was really obvious to me from a pretty young age, like where all the different points of miscommunication could be, and then just like identifying them, picking it apart, breaking it down to like its barest elements, and then working one at a time with each of them. That's been like my whole, it's like the scientific method of dating almost. So I want to start off by touching like what the hell do we mean by dating? Because I mean, I call my company Dateworking. It's like dating and social networking, but like, what do we even mean by dating in the first place? I guarantee if we asked everyone here, we'd probably have as many answers as there are people. And it's something that I've had a lot of trouble if you say like, oh, this person and I are dating, and that person says, no, we're not. And it's like, oh shit. Whoops. I've had that happen. Someone like introduced his friend to it at a party. He's like, this is my girlfriend. She's like, I'm not his girlfriend, I'm a lesbian. And he's like, we've been together for like three years now. And she's like, we've never been together, I don't know what he's saying. But like, how do we know when something is, like, are you dating, are you in a relationship? Like, how do you know any of these things? A lot of it comes down, like, there's a lot of different questions. Like, if you go on 5 trips to a bar with someone, do they count as 5 dates? If you co-worked with someone for a day, is that a date? If you went and got coffee, some people say that's not a date at all, unless I said you wouldn't want to date for coffee. Otherwise, it's not a date, it's just a coffee meetup. And like, people are so meticulous about like what is or is not a date, because sometimes it's really hard to convey intent. It's hard to say like, this is what I want, this is who I am. And when we try to call something a date, that can get really scary for people, because it can signify like an escalation when they're not yet ready for that. But I would say like the baseline for dating a lot of times for people is that it conveys some level of like romantic intent. It's why is it that if I go out with her and we're not dating, we just went out for coffee? I think it can boil down to like there's some degree of romantic intent. There's something that you want to like potentially build from this. I think it's fun, because what is romance? This is something I like Googled a little bit, trying to find out like, is it love? Is it emotional things? Is it intent for future togetherness, coupliness? We sometimes think that it has something to do with like, physicality and sex, but like there are people who are asexual but still romantic. So it clearly doesn't have to be entirely about sex or about sex at all. So like, what the hell are we talking about when we say romance? And once again, I tried to boil that down, and I'm thinking like, baseline for romance is that you have this like intent toward some sort of coupling or a relationship. It's indicating that like you are special and I want more of this thing, whatever we have. But then going beyond relationship intent, no one saw that. What is a relationship? Like, this is even more so than what is dating. What the hell is a relationship? This is where it gets really confusing. We have like a 10-year, a 9-year, 8-year, but like, is it just the longevity that makes that a relationship? Is it that you both are like consenting? Just as the person I described earlier who said like we are dating, the same thing could be said, we are in a relationship, and if someone says no we're not, then we're like, oh well shit, oops. I remember back in the early days of Facebook, like having someone change the Facebook status from in a relationship to it's complicated meant your world was over. So it can be really scary when like, it kind of has to be a two-way thing. You can't just like say you're in a relationship with someone if that person doesn't agree. I could say I'm in a relationship with everyone in the world, but if everyone in the world doesn't then say, oh yes, that's actually the case, then it means nothing. So like, how do we define what a relationship actually is? Sometimes marriage, like that's one of our best societal definitions. It's like you sign a thing saying like, we're doing the thing now, we're married. But sometimes that can be like a very legal thing. For like hundreds of years, marriage was just kind of like a legal thing. You didn't really have to care about the person at all. And that still does happen in many parts of the world where like, yeah, it's a relationship, but it's a legal one. It's not necessarily a personal one. So can we go further? Like, is it defined by falsifiability? Like, how do you prove that this is no longer a relationship? Is it that someone signed saying they're not in it? Is it they stopped spending time with you? Is it they like just said like, go fuck yourself, I hate you? Sometimes the next day you're making out. Like, that's something, there's something I read up, I think in Nashville about that. Someone broke up with his girlfriend on a plane, and then like, she starts like collapsing, crying, because it was right before the plane took off. And then they're like making out like an hour later. So once again, like relationships, they're really complicated. But one of the things I'm thinking about is like when you're trying to define with a person what the hell your relationship is, sometimes you can think like, maybe it's how we define what cheating looks like. How do we know that like I violated the relationship? So basically you have to agree to your terms. When you ask someone like, do you want to be exclusive with me? Like most people say like, oh sure, but they never really qualify like, what does that mean? What does it mean to be exclusive? And like, to know that, you have to know what cheating is. And this is now, we get to the next fun one. So like, I don't know how many people heard about the Ashley Madison thing, where like 30 million passwords and usernames were all dumped to the internet for all to see. And Ashley Madison is a website for cheating spouses. So essentially 30 million people got outed in the span of a 20-minute online breach. But were those people cheating on their partner? Like, it's a website for cheating spouses, but it's not necessarily clear, and this is one of the big problems we have about like calling people out for cheating. Like you see your friend with someone else that you know is not their relationship partner and they're holding hands, like, holy shit, they're cheating. But like, no, you don't know that because you don't know the agreement that person has with their partner. We have this like default assumption of monogamy in society, but that doesn't hold true for most people, because when I ask people who are actively monogamous and identify as such, I ask them things like, what if your partner was like sitting on a subway next to someone and then they like bumped knees and like, oh, they smiled at each other, like, ah, you touched me. And then like, then they looked again and they started in the conversation. And by the end of that subway ride, they're like totally squared off toward one another, talking really animatedly. Has this been cheating? Like this person, now they're very much flirting together. There was no formal touch or anything, but you know, what is that? Sometimes it could be something, like I think I have someone in my family who mentioned that like her husband is allowed to see anyone he wants as long as he's back before midnight that night. And as long as he's back before midnight, it's not cheating. So like, it's really fun, like humans are, no, but that's their definition, like if you ask them if they're monogamous, they're like, yes. Because for them, that's not cheating. That like cheating is completely defined by you and the person or persons that you're in a relationship with. And it's really interesting to see how people define it so differently. One of the things we can look at is like sex. Someone says, don't have sex with other people. Like that's all I want from you. Like you know, like you talk to other people, that's fine, just don't have sex with them. Now, you know what's coming. This is a very, very tiny sample of different kinks and fetishes that people it can fall in the realm of sex, but sometimes someone says like, you know, like putting out Cheerios are sex. You know, they're so good, like it's the exact same feeling. Some people say like, tickling with feathers can be a form of sex, but like, there's like the legal definition, which is like a useful definition, but it still doesn't encompass so many different things. My friend was just talking about, she works at a BDSM dungeon. So they get raped by police all the time. The police are like, you can't be having sex here. And they're just like, no one's having sex by your definition. Like, this person's being electrocuted. This person has it's not sex because it's like not defined. It's like a ferret. Like, I don't know. Like, there's so many different things that humans do. But like, how do we know when it's sex? And like, when it comes back to cheating, like, if someone electrocutes you at a kink dungeon, did you cheat on your partner? Like, do we discuss this? And what if that's something you really want, but like you got into a relationship and you didn't discuss that up front? So like, how do you then present that to your partner as like, I want to do this thing, I've always wanted to do this thing, my life would, if I died tomorrow and didn't do this thing, I would hate myself. I'd be dead. Anyway, how do I negotiate that with my partner? Like, we're really bad as a society, given the normative nature of monogamy and, you know, like sexual fidelity. We assume that like that just has to happen, but we never discuss what the hell that actually is. This is another fun one. This is like, you can have sex with whom? So like, even if we define like what sex is, like, what if I'm a heterosexual male, and this is like very frequently the case. Heterosexual males, heterosexual females, men will say to their female partners like, you can't have sex with men, but you can have sex with women because they're not a threat to me. And that like, if you wonder how bisexual women feel about that, it's like bi erasure is basically telling them like, oh, you don't matter because like you're not a real enough person to be in a legitimate relationship with this person, so therefore you're not a threat. And that pisses off a lot of people. But it really calls into question like, when we are trying to understand like, what is sex, what is a relationship, what do we actually want? So many of us have never heard of 90% of these terms. Like, what if, like, the fun thing is that, like, humans are really complex. There's, like, multiple overlapping spectra. Like, you have your gender, you have your, like, gender identity, your gender performance, you have your actual biological sex, and then even within that, you have, like, people who you're attracted to sexually, people you fantasize about, people you actively do things with in the past, people you intend to actively do things with in the future. All of these are different elements, and you can be a, like, straight male who has fantasies about gay men, who only interacts with men right now, but has nothing but intention to interact with only women in the future. Like, all of these things are completely possible to be like part of a single person. And there's so many assumptions that we kind of bake into how we do dating nowadays that it makes it really hard for people to be themselves and to actually like express the full extent of their identities. So one of the things I'm trying to push, like, kind of like break down for everyone is like, we are really, really complex, and that's like, it's not a bad thing. It just means that we have to know how to talk about it. We have to, like, in order to date better, we have to be able to understand someone else and have like the openness to say like, I want to understand who you are. Like there's potentially so much more to you than just what I see when I'm looking at you. And that was what motivated the question that we asked at the beginning, the salon introduction. Like, what is something that someone looking at you would be like, I would never have thought to ask you that question, but I'm glad that we did, because now we're like one level deeper into our like intimacy or bondedness. Once again, this will be something that everyone can like see later. If you just send me an email, I'll send you the whole deck. So yeah, this is just a summation of what we've done so far, or summary, not summation. People are crazy. Like, there's so many different things going on that it's really hard to judge anyone for anything when you realize that even within yourself, there's so many competing things pulling, and it changes from time to time. And even when we think we know ourselves, we actually don't. Like the statistics are pointing, like OkCupid had this really fun blog post about what people say they want in their preferences and what they actually get, or what they actually, like you can say, I only want blonde women over 6 feet tall, and then who do I message? I message like 5 foot tall Hispanic women, and that could be something that's completely like, someone thinks that that's what they wanted, that's what they said, but then like what ends up happening? We don't really know ourselves that well, which makes it all the more important that we have to be able to talk about the things that we know and the things we don't know. We have to be able to say, like, I think I want this, but I'm open to like potentially being proven wrong. Like, how do we find that disconfirming evidence? How do we, when talking to someone, not just express what we think we want, but remain open to different things that they may want as well. Allow them to kind of teach us more about who we are just by virtue of that conversation. I think one of the challenges that a lot of people face is like, how do you have that conversation? How do you talk to someone not just about like, let's say I go out and I'm like, I just want someone to hook up with tonight. And people have that, like that's a very common need in New York, but people are not very good at expressing that. And if you're talking to someone and it's clear that that's what they want, maybe there is a better world in which you not only hook up, but then have an additional like friendship beyond that. And maybe you would have both wanted that, but one of the parties doesn't know how to actually convey that, like, I'm not just the kind of person who hooks up, I actually like doing more. How do you convey that? So we want to get into next is like proper methods of communication. Can't guarantee the next. Yeah, how do we communicate through everything? This is where we get into a fun video. I don't know if anyone has seen this or heard of it before. It's one of my favorite videos. It's only like 2 minutes. It's on human empathy, and like communicating is mostly just like understanding what the hell the person in front of you gives a shit about and what they want. Like everyone is the protagonist in their own narrative. So when you're dealing with someone, like you can't just assume that what you want is the only thing that's relevant, because like there's a person there. They've lived however many years, however many decades. They have their own wants and needs. Maybe some shit's going on at home that they can't convey to you because they don't know you well enough yet. Maybe they're afraid because they don't know what to say. Like, empathy is really the process of letting people be who they are in all their complexity and helping them through that and being with them for that so that you can both be on the same thing. And this video will do a pretty fun job of explaining what that's all about.
So what is empathy, and why is it
Sound okay?
very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, I'm down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with "at least." I had it, yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredible.
No, like you don't have to be compatible with someone, and statistically, you're not going to be. Like, if you imagine like how complex we have, I just like went through all these different levels of complexity. Like, how can you possibly expect that one person standing across from you, who you just met today, is going to in any way be able to just align with you on every single thing that would allow for a relationship to majestically form? Like, that's something that is like a very low probability event. But what's far better in terms of like your statistical odds here is having that person, even if they're not going to be your one true love or your in any way like compatible partner, having that person be your best confidant because they respect you and trust you and care about you, so that they can take every person they'll ever meet and be able to say, whoa, like you're like I wasn't a good fit for Steve, but you're probably far better, so like let me make that introduction. Like, the goal of dating, in my eyes, is empowerment. It's understanding who the hell this person is in front of you, or people if you're going on group dates, and then thinking like statistically we're not going to be compatible. So don't have that be like your huge barrier where as soon as you discover that you're not, big surprise, that you just reject that person and you write it off as a waste. It's instead like, how do we build a connection that can last for years? How do I ensure that this person doesn't become just like a waste of our, how do we make this not a waste of time? And the way that I've found to do it is through empathy, through connection, through understanding what the hell this person's all about, appreciating them for their complexity, and then giving them the opportunity to be able to talk about like what it is that their future life should look like in their eyes. Like asking questions that help you get to the heart of like, who are you, what are you about, where are you headed? I don't expect you to have to head in my direction or do anything. I have no obligations for you right now. Like, there's nothing at all that I can expect from you because we just met. And this could even be like I'm in a relationship with you for 5 years, and like I still like if we haven't established that this is like a legitimate expectation, then I can't have it. Like everything should come down to trying to connect with people and understand who they are and what they want and how we can help them get there. Because then we can say to them like, here's who I am, here's what I want. Like this is my path that I'm envisioning for myself. Like, can you do this? Can you do the same for me? And I think that's where dating goes from being this like really shitty series of like, I hate all these dating apps, I go on shitty dates, I've been to 5 bar dates this week and every one of them sucked because the people sucked. Like, I've been on over 200 dates and I've yet to be on a bad date. I've never once had the experience of saying like, I didn't like that person, that was shitty, I wish that didn't happen. And my whole philosophy the entire way through is like, when I'm on any date, is like, let's do a thing that we both want to be doing already. Let's talk about the things that we care about and are actually like working toward in life, and then let's pretty much acknowledge as quickly as possible, like, if there's no overlap, that's perfectly fine. We don't expect that. We're still doing a cool thing. We've logged one awesome life experience. And moving forward, I know 20 people that would probably be a better fit for you. So like, let me like, come to the next thing that I'm hosting, come to a game night, come like just integrate in some way in the future, or even just like add each other on Facebook and like talk later about like whether or not they have a roommate who needs help getting, finding a new apartment. Like, you can be helpful to people throughout your life because friendships are more than just like, did we hook up and like it? Did we happen to, like meet at like a game night and then only ever meet at that game night again? Like, people are wonderfully complex, and so there's so many different ways in which you can interact. So you have to understand like, what does a friendship mean? And how do you extend that to people? How do you connect with them and allow for yourselves to have multiple points of connection through time, even if you, in that first meeting, didn't really like sync well or didn't feel like you wanted to hook up with them, which is probably expected most of the time. Expected that you wouldn't want to, because, I don't know, show of hands of people who showed up on the first date thinking they wanted to sleep with the person and then found out very quickly that they definitely didn't. I see very low hands. Last point on here is just like, when I talked about like connecting with people, the left side is really like how you get closer to those stages. How do you get from the point of like, I'm meeting you for the first time, who the hell are you, what are you all about? Some people like that like falling in love phase, and the whole like, we're going from this stage to this stage, we're experimenting with things, then all of a sudden it's getting super intense, I can't think of anything but you. And then it's like, what do we want to do? How do we want to be? What do we want to make of this? Like, these are all like fun human things. People like this process. It feels really good. We're like biochemically driven to be obsessed about this process. And if you get to this stage and then suddenly that person pieces out, you can be completely devastated. So I think in order to do the process right, I would argue you can do it with virtually anyone you meet. The question really becomes like, how far do you want to go with someone, and how do you communicate that to them? How do you communicate like, this is the extent of my interest in these things, but like my friendship is worth more than just like whether or not we slept together. I think that's like a really, how many people have asked like, can we be just friends? Can we just be friends? Or let's just be friends. I think the word just is almost always present there, and it's really problematic. Because if you think about it, when you say, like, when people are sending emails to you, it's like, oh, can you like just give me some time? It's like this like very deferential, like I'm acknowledging that what I'm about to ask is like not as good as the other thing. Can we just do that? Like,
I have a question, sort of. My question is, I find sometimes it's harder to be friends with somebody than to date them. Like that like, they're like, well, I'll date you, but I'm not going to be your friend. And I don't know if, how you feel about that.
we can touch on that at the end. I think that is a fun one. But a lot of it comes down to qualifying, like, what does my friendship entail? And that's something like, when you say, let's just be friends, that's saying my friendship is worth less than my sex. So if I were to also be having sex with you, that would be the ideal state. But the fact that I'm saying, let's just be friends, means that my friendship is actually like the lesser of two possible states. And when you're saying that, you're basically cutting off that entire bondedness. Because you're saying, like, as soon as you say, let's just be friends, you're like, my friendship's like, whatever, I'm not that great friend. But if you say, like, the alternative is just remove the word just, like, let's be friends, this is really cool, like, I like that this exists, I like that you're a person who also plays D&D, like, let's be friends, and, like, friendship can actually be a wonderful thing. Like, once again, we're really complex, there's so many different things we can, like, do for one another, and, like, do with one another over the course of our lives, that calling friendship, like, if we only have friendship as, like, the not a relationship, therefore friendship, then when you say, let's just be friends, it's like, it kind of makes it seem really crappy, but there's a lot more to friendship and connectedness than just, well, I guess, like the way we typically look at it. I think that's like something we can, I want to touch on that a little bit more at the end, but I want to move into a little bit more depth on relationships. Because sometimes you say let's just be friends because you don't know what kind, like you're like, okay, we can't be in a relationship, so let's be friends. But what the hell do you mean by relationship? Like, this is all different types of, this, I think this is just non-monogamous relationships. I don't know if you don't even want to read these. Like, there's just so many different things you can call a relationship, and all of these are valid relationships that people actually have. To make this a little bit more organized, you can look at it this way. So we have like open relationships and closed relationships, and even in closed relationships, you can still have multiple people. You can have like a triad where it's like 3 people in a closed relationship. Within monogamy, you have like just lifelong monogamy, serial monogamy, deuterogamy. I actually don't know what that is. You can be single, but even within single, there are different like ways of doing single. You can be like friends with benefits. That's like another one that people are pretty. No one really knows what that means. But once again, you have to learn how to define it, because imagine if someone says, do you want to be in a relationship, or do you want to be exclusive? This is what goes through my mind when someone says that. I'm like, what the hell did you just ask? Can you please qualify the statement? Like, have you asked me any of the questions about who I'm dating, who I'd like to be dating, what kind of relational paradigms I'm actually interested in? Because saying in a relationship, that basically sets this bar here. It's like, in order for, like, you can't see eye to eye. We've already acknowledged that there's immense complexity to people and to relationships. So when you say you want to be in a relationship, what does that mean? So I think one of the things that scares people about dating is that people assume you're either hooking up, in a relationship, friends. Like, we only have a couple little categories, but like without acknowledging all this other overlap, all these other different paradigms, it makes it so much more difficult to be able to get any of the things you want. Because like, I don't want to just be hooking up with you. I actually want a relationship. But like, absent like a perfectly monogamous relationship, sure, I'd be willing to do certain things, but I'd want to have a friendship be part of that too. And I want to make sure that like we're not just hooking up on Friday nights, we're also like going to board game nights. We're also going out on fun adventures. We can vacation together. But like, at what point do you call it a relationship? That's when it gets like the word relationship. Like, we all have the power and freedom to define it however we want. The question is, how do we talk about it? Like conveying what you want, that's really the hardest part. Barring like being in a very religious or like culturally intense setting where like you have expectations placed on you that are not from yourself. Like we're lucky in America to have a very like, at least like, for most people you have total freedom to like be in any kind of relationship you want. In other places and even in like subcultures and sex within America, like there are definitely issues of like you are in this kind of a marriage or like you are now being placed into a marriage because that is the formal relationship title that we've given this structure. But for most people, we're not confined to arbitrary confines of like pre-existing relational structures, and we can actually just build it ourselves, which can either be really fun or really scary. I put together a fun little Excel sheet that's publicly available, and it's like, how do you decide what the hell kind of relationship you want to be in? And this is like super, super basic. It's just like, here's the different dimensions of compatibility you can have with someone. Top line is like, what are your priorities? Like, what are the things that you absolutely need most? Is it sexual? Is it romantic? Is it religious? What are the things that are like the new priority rank? And like, for me, having fun is like #1 thing. Any relationship I'm going to be in has to be premised upon having a lot of like fun all the time. And like, you can really qualify that however you want. Like, you have to think to yourself, like, what are the things that you really care about? What are the things? And this is like right now. It can change at any time. It can even plan like how you want it to change in the future. Next step is like, what is your capacity or availability on each one? So like, if you are currently saying that like fun is one of your most important things, and like, are you available to have fun, or are you super busy with work so you only have fun like 1 day a week? If you're saying that like emotional compatibility is something that's really important to you, how much availability do you actually have emotionally? Like maybe you're going through like feelings over your ex, and so even though emotional compatibility is important, you don't have the availability right now to offer to someone. So if they say, can we be in a relationship, you have to first qualify like, okay, I really like you, I like where this could go, but like I'm going through this right now, so let's talk more about that. And like, can we still have a thing that works given this? And the next part of that communication is this last step, is like, what are the risk factors that would cause this to be unstable? Like if I say I'm really emotionally stable right now, but like if these things happen, and like this is how likely they are to happen, then I might not be as stable. I am right now like available for a lot of fun things. I can do game nights all the time, but like if I got 3 new clients who are suddenly demanding a lot of hours, then like my capacity to have fun would go down. All of this is just basic communication. It's like letting someone know before, like, rather than having the conversation, do you want to be in a relationship? Yes or no. You can qualify, like, there's so much more to be talking about in order to make sure that you're really connecting with this person and like understanding exactly what they want and who they are. Alright, so this is now we get into like the fun of online dating. If you want, I can take a very quick break for like questions and water if there's water in here. Yeah.
So you mentioned like going on a date you've never had a bad time because you are always learning about other people and encouraging them and that kind of thing. I think that's really cool, but I'm also wondering, like, all of what you said those good dates are sounds to the way I've heard motivational interviewing explained to me. And I don't know if you've heard that term, but like what's the difference? There's more of an expectation on you than if you were, say, motivationally interviewing someone else. Like you're also trying to get something out of that conversation?
If you're going on a date where you're just like sitting across from someone and talking to them for 3 hours, like is that that would feel like an interview. But like a lot of my dates, they don't have anything to do with that. It's like I've already identified, like I have a list of the top 50 things I want to be doing in New York, and every week I'm going to do at least 1 to 2 things off of that list. And so my dates are like, who's the person who wants to go and do the things that are on this list with me? So no matter what, like I'm feeling accomplished. I could have stood up on a date and still have a good date. Like it's because I'm still doing things I already wanted to do. I was going to do it anyway, and like now you're here. That's awesome. Like the more the merrier. I've had like 2, 3 people show up on the same date, and then it's like, okay, we're going to go together. We're going to like make this a really fun thing. And like, oh, like the gender ratio is a little skewed here. We're all heterosexual, so let me call a few other people, and we'll at least like make this increase the probability of people feeling like more connected or feeling like they're not like awkward about it. So I think the way that I'll get into this, like how we structure what a date actually looks like, whether even calling it a date, that helps us understand like how we can optimize for happier or better dates, or ones that are essentially failure proof.
I have a question too. The Excel thing that you had. So do you actually bring this out when you have that conversation? No, because honestly, and maybe it's been like several dates, or you're already kind of like into a relationship. But what does that mean? And you should have this conversation. And how do people take to this?
The question is, like you're saying, how do you define it if you're already in that relationship? If you haven't defined whether or not you're in a relationship, like what are the standards? We saw the standards. Like, how are you cheating on this person, if at all?
Yeah.
If not, then what the hell are you? And if you don't know, then this helps you find out. This gives you because most people they don't know how to use the words to talk about all these different things and their preferences. Like you can use that other sheet about different sexual preferences to say okay, are these things that you're even interested in doing at all? Like if not, then it's fine. And if I need to be doing those things because that's part of the life I want to be living is these are my kinks or my fetishes and I want to have access to that, so I'm going to negotiate for that in the relationship. I'm going to say sexual needs very high, need these things met. If you don't or can't do that, then that's okay. It just means that that's going to be a missing element of this relationship. And while I still think you're a fucking awesome person and I want to be in this relationship with you, you have to acknowledge that my needs will be consistently unmet. And how important is that to both of us? Am I willing to forego meeting those needs? Right now, yes, sure, because I'm in love with you, because it's fucking awesome. I want to keep doing the thing we're doing, but how long do we expect that to happen? What are the variables that could cause this to be a sudden problem? This chart basically predicts when and where every one of your fights in that relationship is going to happen. It's telling you okay, this was your priority. You said sex was a 5 priority, whatever. These are there may be some a more complicated version of this chart would help predict it. You're saying this is my priorities, these are the things I want. Oh, they're not being met by this person in this relationship. Oh, and we're exclusive, so it will not be met for the entire duration of this relationship. How long do we expect that to go on? And oh, you're going on a cruise next week. You might end up meeting someone who can meet all of these things. Is this now an active threat to the relationship? How do we talk to our partner about ideally this would be happening, I don't pull it out necessarily, definitely not on that first date, but if you really want to build something with someone, and you want to say, I want to be as open as possible, put everything on the table, you are my person, you're doing the relationship things, so I don't want to have to lie to you, I don't want to hide anything, I want to share this with you, and so this just gives you the opportunity, you don't need this to have the same conversation, but this just gives you all the different variables you can be looking at, let's talk about this, we totally forgot to talk about that thing, oops, but if you forget, it's perfectly reasonable. This is not even a tenth of the different dimensions of compatibility you can have. There's genetic compatibility. You can go into pheromonal signatures. And how important is that? I don't know.
If the other person hasn't seen this rubric, for lack of a better word, they might not be able to give you as informative answers or have taken the time to think through it to the level of depth that you did. So
I give it to both. I would make it both say how do you priority rank these things? How
so
important
you have that conversation at some point potentially. If you're serious, if you want to get to the next level.
If I want a capital R relationship, I want to call
Yeah,
it this
exactly.
thing. I want it to be. If it's possible for us to cheat on one another, we should qualify how.
That's what
and
I'm
this, yeah, before you. This is not something you just pop out on a first date.
Of course not. Yeah.
You could try it, but it's going to confuse you. Let's take one more question.
So you spend a lot of time talking about kind of the complexity and multidimensionality of different types of relationships. I'm wondering, do you personally see any merit to the types of heuristics we kind of socially use? These simple, say, few-dimensional assumptions we make when we ask somebody out on a date. I mean, one might think, for example, that these heuristics are very useful, especially, they might save time, it might save money, it might save disappointment, because when you ask somebody out to dinner on a Friday night, for example, there's a social understanding here that, while there might be some nuanced differences between these individuals, the social understanding provides a kind of groundwork. I mean, do you see merit to these heuristics?
Oh, absolutely. I think that I always advise people if you're asking someone out on a Friday night drinks date, you're essentially setting the bar of are we sleeping together or not, and if not, it's a failure. It's really hard to have a Friday night drinks date and then part ways happily and be oh, it was great getting to know you, goodbye. There's so many social things that are kind of wrapped up in societal expectations based on when you're meeting, how you're meeting, what platform you're meeting on, and then when I touch on that in the next couple things, which is qualifying all this shit.
How much more? Do you think we could finish in 10?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I want to get into what the hell's on dating? This is the way we do it now. It's like, oh, you said the thing that I didn't want you to say. Fuck off. Like, so like, this is my favorite first date question, Bulbasaur, Charmander, Squirtle. Because if someone doesn't know, they're not compatible. They don't get you at that fundamental level of like, even if you say Charmander, it's over. We're done.
So you're a Squirtle?
No. So, but that's the thing. Like, this is the way that people approach dating. It's like, oh, you said the one thing that makes me not want to date you anymore. So like, bye. And like that's for me. Like when I'm looking at that, I'm like, you just pissed 50 years of potential referrals to awesome people down the drain, based on one single criterion, which you may not have even like heard them properly. And so we're so quick to judge people for these things without actually like understanding why do you like that? What is it about like your experience that like made this be your answer? That made you dress like this on a date? That made you want like suggest this kind of a date? Like the curiosity should be overwhelming the like judgment, because that allows you to connect with someone at a deeper level, even if you don't have to date or be in a relationship with someone just because you connected with them. The human connection is just an objectively good thing. It's what our species is built for. Dating sites. A couple of you haven't been on any ever. There's over 5,000 now, sites and apps. The ones you've heard of probably number about 10, maybe even just 5. In New York, the only relevant ones you should be on are really like 5. It's like OkCupid, Coffee Meets Bagel, Tinder, Bumble, Hinge. And at that point, maybe Happen. At that point, you're done. Like most people, you shouldn't really need more than 5 dating apps to make you happy. I've been on over 100. Certainly, I've only really stuck to about 2 or 3. And they vary across the board. Like, what the hell do you want from this app? Like, you can kind of sometimes hope that, like, if I'm going on like a hookup app, I can find hookups. But the fun part of humans is that, like, you can't make that assumption about anyone. Even if they're on Tinder, it does not mean that they interpret Tinder as a hookup app. For me, it's the world's largest sociosexual network. It's a group of people who all swipe right on you, and you can communicate with all of them at once via content creation. The same way you would on Snapchat, except that when people reply on Tinder, the people who've already indicated that they like you in some way. So like, Tinder for me is like this completely newfangled way of doing dating that I find to be fascinating. Not many people are using it that way yet, and I think that it's a trend that's it's very nascent right now. In terms of intent, this can be fun. Some people message someone on the internet with intent, and they haven't acknowledged that, like, maybe it's not even the right person you think you're talking to. Maybe it's someone who's just there to troll you. Maybe it's someone who only came on because like their friend asked them to and they don't actually give a shit. Maybe it's a ghost profile. Maybe it's a profile managed by me. Like, that's happened before. Someone messaged my friend's profile because I was managing it for her, and then he was like, this line sounds a lot like Steve in her profile. And he said it to some other friends of mine. They're like, it does sound like Steve. And then they found me in the reflection of the photo in her profile and realized that it actually was me who made the profile. So you never know. It's the internet. Like, first rule of the internet is that, like, it's weird. There's a lot of shit there, and you don't really know what you're gonna get. So like, this helps. Even when your intent is like explicitly sexual, explicitly romantic, acknowledge you're on the internet, so you have to be a real person first. Like, you have to actually you assume anything you ever write is going to be on BuzzFeed one day. So the question is like, how creepy do you want to be? How honest do you want to be? Like, can you live authentically, such that no matter what is ever published about you is always like, yeah, I can own that. I can own that completely because that's like who I am. But yeah, be careful. Tinder alone, that swiping thing, getting, what was it, carpal tunnel, your thumbs, or tendonitis. Like, these are all the apps that do the exact same thing that Tinder does in terms of swiping. And this is as of last year. And they were all made within 2 years because that's when Tinder came out, about 2 years ago. So, in terms of the number of apps that you can find that do this bullshit, it's like, how many do you actually need to be on? Not many. In terms of tactics, this is now like, this is what I used to charge people for. Like, they'd sit down with me for 2 hours and I'd walk them through every single thing they want in a relationship or in dating, and then walk them through every profile they want to build out and all the photos they need, all the profile text they need, all the messaging text they need, how to understand like how to send the right message to the right person at the right time, and then also like the most relevant thing, like, you don't understand anything about this person because all you have is like a few lines of text. you don't know what's going on in their life, you don't know why they made this profile, you don't even know if it's them. So like understanding the general like experience of the person on the other side is really important. So before I message any women, I go to my female friends and I say, what does your inbox look like? What am I dealing with? Like, that's an important question to be asking. And you learn so much about how to message people based on understanding like what they're currently receiving. I'm just going to breeze through this because we're short on time, and I also don't want, like, these are all things, like, it's already here. It doesn't really, designing a profile is something that's, like, not super exciting to just, like, listen about. I don't know if anyone's, like, super excited about what kind of profiles to do. When it comes to photos, all of the information is available on the internet. There's ample information about, like, what kind of photos to use and how to use them, what ones to take. Bottom line, DSLR, early morning or golden hour, with a dog or a cat, taken by a friend, not a selfie, showing your story. Something that, like, your photo is worth 1,000 words, make your photo worth 50,000 words. Have it tell as much of your story as you possibly can, so people can be like, holy shit, that's actually really cool. If your photo is just a selfie, then they're only going to be able to comment. People are going to look at that and be like, oh, like, what do I comment on? Oh, nice tits. Like, that's usually what people get if that's what you're putting forth in your photo. So if your photo's like, here's me, like, graduating from med school, it's like, oh, cool, like, I went to this med school. Like, they're like, give people the opportunity to connect with you on a deeper level. When it comes to profiles, once again, like, when I'm thinking about how to build out a profile, the most important thing I want to do is, like, why do you have this profile? Like, what do you want the person who's going to be looking at you and reading through this profile, ultimately sending you a message or replying to your message, what the hell are they seeing? How do you convey to them that, like, you're a real person, that you're actually, like, interesting, you're doing interesting things, you're living your life, and, like, what are the areas where they can get involved? So the things I always like to include are, like, this is who I am, this is what I'm working on, but, like, these are all things that, like, I have planned. That these are the things that I want to be doing. So if you're going to message me, like, plan to do one of these things. It'll be really fun. Like, we can have a fun date that's, like, conditional on, like, I want to go and check out this new coffee shop that just opened in Williamsburg because I'm addicted to coffee, and that's what I do on Saturdays. And someone can be like, oh, I want to go there too. That's awesome. That happened this morning. Set up a date in a matter of, like, 4 minutes because it's just like, here's the thing I want to do. They say, I want to do that thing too. I'm like, okay, cool, let's go. Like, dating doesn't have to be a really complicated thing, and, like, you can be doing the things you want to do, but you have to convey in your profile, like, what the hell is it that you actually plan to be doing? Messaging, all of these things are, like, wonderfully complicated, but I'm trying to boil it down to, like, super quick takeaways. Whenever I'm on OkCupid, I send a 3-line message most of the time, and it's always like, I want to make it unique to that person, so I'm saying, I write your profile, like, give a shit about you. I want to understand, like, who you are. This is something I found particularly interesting. This is, like, what I know about this other topic, or that you might find interesting too. It's kind of like building that connection, adding value to their life, so they didn't just read a hey, nice tits and be like, well, okay. Or they say, like sometimes you just say, you have a beautiful eye, and it's like, okay, that's nice. Like, what, now what? I don't understand why you're saying this. So, like, add value, and then follow up with a, like, this is the thing, like, this is the call to action. What should I do next? So I always say, like, I'll show, I think, an example of one of my messages. Oh God. First, this is really funny. This is something that someone recently sent to one of my friends.
Steve, can you read that out? I can't see.
It says, nice profile. If you're open-minded to a mature, drama-free, beneficial option, let's chat. And no, I am not a creep. Actually, I am a busy single professional. I just think it's best to be genuine. She replied, you suck. And he said, okay. So yeah.
Why don't you have a profile picture?
Why doesn't this person?
Wait, is it somebody else or? Yeah.
Someone said that.
Oh, okay,
And
okay.
this person
So it's
replied,
not you.
No. This is the bad message.
This is how you get
This is the shitty message that you don't want to send.
Oh, okay.
Do I have a good one in here? This is one that resulted in. I actually sent this one. I saw someone who was a freelancer, and I wanted to meet up for the sake of co-working because I wanted to say, like, what the hell? I want to find out, like, what kind of project she's working on. See, like, what kind of overlap there might be in our lives. I saw, like, she works from different coffee shops, and I said, like, actually, I have a place with Wi-Fi right now. We can co-work out of there for the next couple hours. And we met up, like, 12 hours later and co-worked for 8 hours. I'll read the message. It said, that freelance life. You should come co-work with me. I'm apartment sitting for a friend in the village with a stupidly large apartment, and it's nice to have others around for motivation. I'll be there all day, every day, through this week through Sunday, accepting occasional dashes to social media week presentations that are peppered throughout the week. Feeling productive? And I linked like my phone number, my Facebook. They publish that on BuzzFeed. I don't care. Like this is like a real request. It's like I just want to like understand who this person is. I picked a time and a place. I said this is what's going on. Here's my contact information. Like the next, like try to reduce those decision variables. Like this person added me on Facebook about like 4 minutes later, and then we set up a co-working date, and it was wonderful. Like this is the kind of thing that like I see dating morphing into, not this constant stream of like I like a beneficial thing. Like this, there's so much bullshit that people do where like if you don't understand like what this person is going through or like what kind of messages they're receiving, then it's really easy to send shitty messages or to like either denigrate them or make them feel like an object. But like I think the important thing is understanding that like be real with people. Be what's up?
Quick question. So I can see why that's nice, but just from my perspective, my immediate reaction was, if someone reads that you are an unvetted person, kind of inviting someone to an unvetted location, this apartment that you're talking about, why do you think this ended up working out and they didn't take that perspective instead?
This is where the fun comes in about having a good profile. Having a profile that says like, here's the things that I post about feminism. That was like one of my first things in my profile. A lot of it is, here's the other people that I'm dating. Go check out their profiles. They're really cool. They're part of my life. They're going to be here forever. Here's like different things that I want to do with the city. It's like you're a real person. Like you can. There's so many ways of validating that. And your profile is like that's part of your responsibility to have a profile that helps. We'll read the last like 3 slides.
Perfect.
Oh,
Do you want to just take questions?
yeah.
Because we can. So we're gonna do the activity at 9:30, so it's like 2 minutes of questions. But Steve will be here, and he will walk around. So all 13 people.
Wait, so do you want to skip the activity or?
No, let's go to the activity because
okay.
you want.
Yeah.
Like we set it up. So basically, what you're gonna do now is each of you got a card.